and she basically looked me up and down and she said, we get people come into this hospital who are actually ill. Like, I have seen people come into this hospital who actually have eating disorders. You're fine. Hello lovelies, it has been a while. I'm really sorry that there was no video last week. I was having some memory card issues. The memory card that I usually film with is literally just like died. I have no idea why. I'm not very good with technology. I'm on a bit of a time limit today because I need to leave the dance in like 50 minutes, which sounds like a long time, but with the amount that I waffle, you guys have no idea how much content I actually film and then cut back for you. I chat for like an hour and then you guys get like a 20-minute video out of it. So we're gonna speak quick and we're gonna stick to the points. If you guys don't already know, my name's Millie, hi, and I am recovered from anorexia. I was 14 years old when I developed an eating disorder, and today I'm going to speak about my experiences with the UK Eating Disorder Services, which are also known as CAMHs. Obviously, I'm not going to mention any specific numbers or anything that I think could be triggering, but if you are in a vulnerable place at the moment with your eating, then maybe give this video a miss and come back and join us again next week. You know yourself best, so if you think that this video could be unhelpful, then just click off and do what's best for you. I've been trying to decide like how much of a backstory I want to give, but I think that rather going into the whole like when my eating disorder developed and all of that jazz, I will just start by explaining when like my eating disorder really developed into like fully blown anorexia, and when my mum noticed, which is when I was 14 years old. When my mum noticed that I was displaying disordered eating habits, I think initially she rang the doctors, and the doctors basically said to her like, well, how much does your daughter weigh? And my mum told them my weight, and the doctor was basically just like, yeah, there's nothing we can do, like there's no point us even putting in a referral for the eating disorder services because her weight isn't low enough. And you know, she effectively said like, come back when your daughter's lost more weight and maybe we can do something. Obviously my mum wasn't happy about that. No parent would be. Well, I hope not anyway. She rang the doctor again like later that same day and, you know, like threw all the statistics at her about like how anorexia is an eating disorder, not a weight disorder. You know, shout out to my mum for doing that, because if she hadn't, I would have seriously deteriorated by the time they would have seen me. The doctor agreed to get me in to do like some bloods and some general health checks, but she was still like, no, like we cannot even refer you to CAMHs because like they just won't see you. This was during, when was it? During 2020. And so CAMHs was super busy, and it was like during the lockdown still. So, you know, it wasn't ideal timing on my part, but it is what it is. Like, I didn't choose to develop an eating disorder. I can't remember how long I had to wait before I went in to get my bloods done, but I have a feeling that it was only a few days. They took my bloods and they took like my blood pressure, my standing and resting heart rate, and they did an ECG as well, which is where they check your heart. And then I went home from the doctors, and later that day my mum got a phone call from the doctors and they said, we have an ambulance on the way for your daughter. Her results have come back and like there are some abnormalities in her bloods and on her ECG. And I think the ECG is what they were most worried about, because obviously like that's my heart and it isn't good if your heart's like skipping beats. Heart skipped a beat. So I went into the children's hospital and I was seen by the triage nurse, and she basically looked me up and down and she said, we get people come into this hospital who are actually ill. Like, I have seen people come into this hospital who actually have eating disorders. You're fine. And I said to her, I've just been sent here because I have an arrhythmia. Is that it? You know, when your heart like stops for a sec and like misses a beat. And she was just like, nah, look at you, you're fine. Mad. This is mad. I was literally dying. Like, my body was literally giving up on me. And people kept looking at me and going, yeah, she looks okay to me, you're fine. This is a medical professional we're talking about. So they just like kept me in to monitor me for a bit, but they were basically like, you just gotta eat. That's literally what they said. They said just eat, like that's the only thing that is gonna fix it. They didn't take into account the fact that it wasn't easy for me to just eat because I was suffering from an eating disorder. They were forgetting that because I didn't look underweight enough for them. I think after that, a referral to CAMHs actually did go through because I was experiencing like physical health problems because of my eating disorder, they actually like took me a bit more seriously and I started seeing camhs. My memory is like a bit hazy from around this period because I was very unwell. I was pretty like zoned out for a lot of it. Like when I think about it now, like I didn't even feel like me. I started going to weekly sessions with the eating disorders team and it was very weight focused. And as someone who wasn't like severely underweight, this was difficult because they wanted me to gain like a little bit of weight and then they were like, oh no, you're done now, you can stop, you're better. They gave me like a weight gain meal plan, which I pretty much refused to stick to because in my head, everything that I'd been told was, you're not skinny enough, you're not ill enough. So when they gave me a meal plan and said, gain weight, I was like, what are you on about? You told me 2 weeks ago that I needed to lose weight. I remember at one point saying to them like, I'm too big to have anorexia. I'm not skinny enough, like I need to lose more weight. And my camhs worker said to me, yeah, you're right. You don't have proper anorexia. What you've got is something called atypical anorexia, which is the diagnosis that they give to people who aren't underweight enough to have like classic anorexia. And you know, I'm sure this wasn't meant in like a malicious way, but for someone who was desperate to be smaller, losing weight had taken over their whole lives, hearing that, yeah, like you're not thin enough, that's not going to do anything to help them. I was really struggling to get better at home and my family was struggling a lot as well because I wasn't making it easy for them. It got to the point where I was basically like begging them, like my camhs team, to help me properly and to give me some more support because seeing them for an hour a week, it just wasn't cutting it and I was getting worse, everything was getting worse. But again, it was like, no, like you're not ill enough for us to provide you with any more help. And so I just basically like refused to try altogether. That was honestly probably like the lowest point I've ever been mentally with my eating disorder. I didn't want to get better and I didn't think I could get better. And it was literally my entire life at that point. I didn't do anything but sit on the sofa and like wait to die pretty much, which now I think about it is pretty morbid. It must have been awful for my family to see me like in that state. It got to the point where they were threatening to send me to an inpatient unit in Manchester. It's like hours and hours away. The night before they were going to like take me to the hospital, I think it was like 2 AM, and that's when I finally got my shit together and had something to eat, which, you know, nothing like leaving it till the last minute. After that, I managed to like follow the weight gain meal plan a lot better and gain some weight and actually make some progress. This was still with seeing camhs every week, so I was, you know, consistently being weighed and monitored. We were doing a lot of work around like my body image and stuff, which wasn't helpful at all for me because my eating disorder pretty much came from a place of like being traumatized. Like for me it was a trauma response. Sorry, I just had to get changed for dance quickly, but I am back. What I was in the middle of saying was, during this period I was having to gain weight and I was like complying with that, but the cause and like the driving force behind my eating disorder wasn't being addressed. And this isn't necessarily Cam's fault. They didn't know. They just assumed that she has an eating disorder and it is because of societal pressures to look a certain way, you know, it's because she hates her body. And yeah, of course that did come into it, but that isn't what triggered me to start restricting in the first place. It was these horrible thoughts and feelings I was experiencing because of a period of abuse that I had lived through. Restricting my food intake became a way to like dampen down those thoughts and feelings. So of course, as soon as I stopped engaging in my eating disorder and I started following my meal plan and doing everything that I was supposed to, these thoughts came back with full force and I was feeling worse than ever. Because I had got to a healthy weight, according to camhs, it meant that I was better or like well enough to not need to see them as much. I was 15 by this point and I had no idea that I was traumatized. It might sound stupid, but I hadn't even accepted at this point that what I went through was abuse. I just knew that I had to do absolutely anything that I could not to think about it. And now that I couldn't restrict my eating, I was thinking about it. In January of 2021, so when I was still 15, we went into another lockdown in the UK, and so camhs were only seeing like the most severe cases in person, and now that I was a healthy weight again, I wasn't classed as that. So we went back to, well, not went back to, I started seeing them via a Zoom call once a week, and this meant that I wasn't getting weighed and they weren't seeing what I looked like, and they weren't speaking to my parents. They couldn't find out how I was actually doing. The restrictive behaviours just came bam straight back in, and like my eating disorder absolutely spiraled. And unfortunately, I kind of like knew what I was doing a bit better this time. I knew how to hide these behaviours. I knew how to make sure that my parents and camhs had no idea what was going on. And so it wasn't picked up upon until I think mid-February, and by that point I was back at square one. Like, I was worse than I was when I first saw them. Again, it got to this point where they were threatening me with like high levels of care and saying like, you're not going to be able to stay at home. And again, like right at the last minute, I got my shit together enough to start eating, and I was like, look, I'm sorry, I will like commit to this meal plan. And this time I really tried my hardest. This wasn't just like a half-hearted like, okay, I will comply with what you're saying. This was me like, okay, I know it didn't work last time, but I'm going to try my absolute hardest to get better, because living with this eating disorder is absolute hell and I just can't do it anymore. So I did the same thing again of following the weight gain meal plan and getting myself back to a healthy weight. And again, these horrible thoughts and feelings that all stemmed from the trauma that like was still so fresh for 15-year-old me. All of that just came flooding back again, and I found myself having to resort to other behaviours in order to cope. After probably, I think, 2 months of trying to recover from my eating disorder, following the meal plan, gaining weight, trying to get my life back, I secretly was feeling so hopeless. Like, I'd literally never felt worse, and no one had any idea, because on the outside it looked like I was getting better. It looked like I was healing my relationship with food and my body, but that was never the problem. Like, the problem was up here, and I wasn't getting any support in fixing that, so it was just getting worse. So in April of 2021, I attempted to take my own life. When I was unsuccessful, my eating disorder immediately just came straight back in, because that was like one of the only ways that I knew how to cope. The way that I was then treated in hospital wasn't ideal. Hello guys, sorry about that abrupt ending just then. My mum just shouted for me and she was like, we have to go to the dentist now. I'd totally forgotten about that appointment. So we've run out of natural light now, so this isn't going to be like the most nicely filmed, but I don't know, is this light good? Even if it's not, I just want to keep going. I need to leave for dance in like 10 minutes, but we're just going to see how much we can get done. I think we got up to the bit, it's like I'm telling a story, well I kind of am, where I had gone into hospital for an attempt on my life, and then the eating really just went downhill, because I was like, this is going to sound really horrible, but I didn't want to be alive anymore, so there didn't seem to be any point in like eating or drinking, because, you know, that was going to keep me alive, and I didn't want that. Because I was considered a healthy weight, the doctors didn't care and they didn't get it. They were like, just eat, and they'd say to my mum, we don't get it, like, why isn't she drinking? She just needs to drink. She's taking up space for people who actually need it, like she's not actually ill. Just like the most horrible and invalidating stuff you could possibly hear when you're suffering from an eating disorder. The way I was treated in that hospital was horrible. After, I'm not sure how long, it's not really necessary, I was put on like fluids to stop me from actually like dying from dehydration. So they had me on this fluids drip, but they refused to put me on enough to actually sustain me and keep me alive, because obviously like they wanted me to drink myself, and they were convinced that it wasn't because I was mentally like really suffering. They were convinced that I was just being stubborn, which is mad. Hey lovelies, I just wanted to pop on here quickly and say that I'm doing a giveaway at the moment over on my Instagram of the Keep Growing journal, which is, as it sounds, a journal that I released a couple of months ago to hopefully help you guys on your own recovery journeys. And it basically includes all of the journaling and mindfulness techniques that I use to help myself in healing. This is what it looks like, and here is like a sneak peek of some of the inside pages. If you guys want the opportunity to win one of these, then head over to my Instagram now. The giveaway is still up and it is open internationally, so you've all got a chance to win. My Instagram will be linked in the description below. I was mentally so unwell, but they just saw what I looked like and they were like, nah, she's fine. I was not fine. It was during that hospital admission that I finally opened up to camhs about some of the traumatic experiences that I'd been through. I was asked some questions that I'd never been asked before about my past, and I was like, yeah, I guess I wasn't treated great. And that is when they finally clocked that what I had been through was actually abuse. When they realised this, my eating disorder team, like out of the hospital, they were like, there's nothing more we can do for her. This isn't what we do. We deal with eating disorders. We don't deal with anorexia that's been caused by trauma. I'm not sure whether this is true or not, but this is what happened for me, and I was basically just dropped from eating disorder services. I never saw that camhs team again. I was kind of left to figure out how to recover from my eating disorder whilst healing from the like most horrific trauma of my life. Which I'm like, what is going on? I was in the system, I clearly needed help, and you were like, nah, that's not what we deal with. Go speak to someone else. Thankfully, I have been able to recover from my eating disorder, and I have done that pretty much independently from camhs. I'm not saying that I haven't had help elsewhere. My family and my loved ones have given me more support than I could ever imagine, and I'm pleased to say that now I am fully recovered. I don't have anorexia anymore, and even though I sometimes experience negative thoughts about my body and the odd urge to restrict, there's no way on this earth that I would ever go back to the way that I was. I want you guys to know that it is possible to get better without the help from mental health services. I know that they can be really shit, but it doesn't mean that you can't get better, and it doesn't mean that there isn't any more hope for you. I just realised while editing this that I never actually did like an outro, so I just want to say thank you guys so much for being here today and listening to me talk about myself. Felt a bit weird, just like rehashing like my own story when I know that you guys have probably been through like equally terrible things. I just want you to know that the comments are a safe place for you to be open about your own experiences, and I will get back to as many of you as I possibly can. You're not alone. I love you so much, and I hope that recovery and life after an eating disorder is treating you well. I'm proud of you all. I hope you have an amazing week, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.